Hello there folks, this is Ferenc on board again with another video. This time after a interesting meditation with my Reiki teacher and some of the group, I realized I had kind of a little urge to create another video for today, and well, I kind of feel a need to create more and more, not necessarily for the idea of subscribers, which kind of seems to be a parasitic thought more or less, but more because I need to share, and since we all have to live indoors now, it is more time for us to gain on the wisdom and knowledge we always wished we had. Now the idea that I'm gonna speak today is suffering, and well, the meaning of suffering. Now it can be interpreted in a lot of ways, and well, unfortunately it's not something that gives or brings in too much meaning to most people, because most people are well acquainted, or they have the impression that they only come here to experience that which is good and nothing of that which is lower vibrational. Now one thing that I would well think of, not necessarily remind because I'm not entirely sure of this, but the point is this is a lower vibrational universe. It is a three-dimensional universe, meaning, well, it has only three dimensions and its vibration is much lower than higher dimensional realms from where most of us souls actually come. The point is we come from higher vibrational realms in order to experience lower vibes such as pain, suffering, and all sorts of ideas like being, raped in a way, but as I said in previous videos, not necessarily sexually, but harassed, let's say, it sounds much better, and go through all sorts of traumas that in the end only help us evolve at a higher spiritual level. Now many people might not necessarily believe in multiple lives. I am not fully 100% certain of this, although I kind of like 98% accept it. But one thing that I ask myself is that isn't this life important enough that we think about it rather than thinking how other previous lives have been? Indeed, it could be a point that you can access some of the previous lives' experiences so that you improve on this one, but well, other than some meditation exercises, there is indeed some curiosity in my case regarding how I have been in previous lives and how I have evolved, but other than this, and mainly, one should focus on their own lives. If this present life is not interesting enough and you believe it is a lot of suffering, well then you should really reconsider your choices, because the first thing and most important thing to know about suffering is that suffering is a choice. Suffering is not something that happens to you, and the result of suffering usually is that of entering the so-called victim mode. When entering victim mode, it's basically allowing parasites to enter your auric field, your mind, and well, probably even your dimensional bodies, and start enacting certain control over you by creating certain loops inside your mind. These will just repeat thoughts, and by repeating them they will just amplify them because you are the reality that you create. Therefore, pay great attention to what thoughts you come up with, what things you think of, especially when you see numbers like 1, 11, 111, 1111 on the clock, and like literally everywhere else. They are wake-up signs that people need to take more care of the things that they think of. The origin of suffering belongs to some parasitic entities who decided to mess with, well, us, and not only us as humans, because they basically mess with any entity they can. Why this would happen? Well, it's a very simple principle. It is a simple principle of domination. Okay, in our reality, okay, in this universe, we actually vibrate, we actually exist in a universe of the third chakra, the third density, which is our Manipura, or the third chakra. It is the chakra of personal power, and it is the chakra which, when doesn't work balanced, okay, well, the point is that we will exist in different states, like for example dominating others or liking to be dominated, depending on how the lower vibration will influence us. Also, it depends on the background that we acquire. And the point is, the suffering is installed in our minds because of parasites, well, far earlier than we are born. The suffering is implanted on us, or better said, it's, you know, taken into account, and it's decided upon by different parasites before we are even born. Now, part of the suffering is also a way for us to experience, because in the end we're more interested in experiencing what it is like to be, you know, shattered, let's say, you know, heartbroken, or any other such of ideas, which more or less they are illusionary, because they are just outcomes that we create, and we also amplify them through just emotional attachment. Now, many people would blame the devil or different forces that, you know, we suffer because of those. Now, there is a point that says, do not blame the devil for all the sins you commit, because the point is, if the devil truly exists, and well, they are not a he or a she, they're just a force, their purpose is to just test you. And indeed, many people fail, but a recent point of mine, and don't hurry to take it as reality. A recent point of mine is very simple. What if the devil, if they actually exist, are nothing but the codemaster, the developer of this game called life, and this developer's purpose is to create all sorts of, let's call them NPCs, because we can agree that the awareness of many people around us, unfortunately in many cases even our parents, our families, our loved ones, you know, usually it happens that the people closest to us are more like this, but not necessarily. Well, all these NPCs are created in a way with a purpose of, well, testing ourselves, let's say. So the point is, the way life actually exists is very, very simple. The protagonist of this life, it is our brain. Yes, our brain is the protagonist of the game. And the quest of the brain is to achieve fulfillment. Now, at the physical level, its only fulfillment is when it gets to secrete those magical hormones called serotonin, oxytocin, you know, the hormones of happiness and fulfillment. Okay, there are several of those, but these are kind of the most important. Now, the point is, in order for these to be achieved, okay, the point is, it needs some story, okay, just not like, you know, you're spawned in here, you make a step, you get a chest, right? So the brain has developed all sorts of, you know, quests, challenges, and diversities. It has created different races, different, you know, patterns, different ideas, you know, emotional manifestations, and all sorts of ideas, because in the end, the brain is just a manifestation of higher realms, okay? The higher realms were curious of how to experience life in such a universe, and, well, this third-dimensional universe functions by such ways. If you are born on this planet as a life form in here, you will have a central nervous system, and I'm sure any other being on other planets in this universe will also have something like that. It might not necessarily be, let's say, a brain. What if entities on another planet may not necessarily look like us? Let's say they look like elephants. What if their whole systems, okay, their whole, let's say, systems of organs, okay, are actually the brain, okay? They function as a whole, just like ours. They function as a whole, but they are somewhat specialized, okay? Like the stomach doesn't have a decisional purpose like the brain does, or, you know, the heart does not necessarily think like the brain, although they each organ has a let's say emotional processor of their own, and depending on how close or open we are, how aware we are, we may actually feel that. Now, in this game, there have been invited, well, not necessarily invited, these were actually created because, well, there were plans for that, and you always need more adversity, because how else can you experience? When you play a game, you don't want the easy level, okay? You only play that for a bit just to get acquainted. You always want the hard mode, because you know that by going through something hard, you can actually gain something big, right? Much bigger. Just like we are programmed to think. If you work a harder job, you get paid much better. The rules of this game have been changed based on how many different sources felt better, but in the end all has been to the well-being of the ones that followed, because in the end the higher entities, even if we call them bad, you'll hear them being called as archons, the entities that farm us. I cannot see them as necessarily bad. Their vibration may be indeed much lower, and they may not necessarily manifest empathy, okay? But let's not forget that we are here to experience lower vibrations, to experience what it is like to live under control and other things. Basically, to understand the meaning of suffering, and, well, better said, suffering in silence. One of the highest forms of suffering. Now, suffering has a lot of functions, okay? And let's let the archons aside, because their purpose is to simply exist. Now, as parasites, they had to be created in such a way that they are capable of causing harm. But the point is, a collective cannot accept that much harm, so therefore the rule was that these parasites would be set free from creation, and while free, they indeed have a bit more consciousness in a way, and, well, based on how their vibration is and how they function, their purpose is to not use their superiority in a sense of good. Now, how this works is very simple, okay? And this comes in the form of domination, okay? And be it that it's, a sexual fetish or domination as is, there will always be something like this. If we look back in our history, we can actually see that, in a way, women were somewhat dominated, because they were considered, not necessarily that they were, but they were considered the weaker part. Now, I'm not saying any of the genders is weaker, and I will always vow for the equality of genders, because the moment you give power to one of those, it will instinctively use it, but not necessarily for the best of purposes. Now, why this happens? Well, again, it is because we are in a third density vibration. As a planet and as a whole, we are advancing towards a fourth dimensional existence, which is that of the heart. Now, until we reach that, we will still have to shake a lot of the old habits of the third dimensional existence, which is that of the Manipura. Myself, me, right? I, and, separation. Being the best, being the better, right? You can see this in so many advertisements, in like literally everything has to be the best, everything has to be, almighty, all powerful, even the creation as we have made it, okay? Because God and creation are just a creation of our imagination. Now, in my case, I'm not that much of a religious being. I don't need the existence of a god or a pantheon of gods to understand my existence, or to find meaning for my existence. My religion will simply resume itself to, well, there are some forces that made all this possible, and that's kind of it. I don't need to give them shape, I don't need to give them emotion, a state, right? I don't need to have them gaseous or be physical or look like me, because if we actually take Christianity, for example, it's actually an embodiment of pure narcissism, right? And paternity, because it's the male energy, control, rigidity, right? It's all about, well, it looks like the man, it doesn't look like the woman, and he is paternal, and, well, you can actually see the patterns of control. He doesn't have literally anything to do, just watch you and then judge you. It's like the perfect embodiment of narcissism, because Indian narcissists don't have anything to do than this. They just watch you and they just judge you. And, well, I'll throw a video on narcissism probably as soon as possible, because it's another topic that I really love talking about. Now the point with suffering is, as I said, it is a choice. Now why would many people suffer? Now this is a very tricky point, because you see, suffering comes in many shapes, and it's well more than I could cover in a whole simple video. Now suffering is something that happens because we choose, and as I said, it is also the result of entities. As we said, our purpose is to experience lower vibrations, so therefore we will always choose some positive vibrational entities, astral guides, angels and such, and there will also be the other entities. Now the point is, we just don't choose these entities to help us, okay? They won't necessarily help us, they will do much more, they will guide us, but the point is, there will be other entities very curious to mingle with us, because as they said, it is a free dimension. It is a dimension where everything has the right to manifest, and that includes higher beings. Now the point of domination is very, very simple. It is a principle that can be resumed as, I'm bigger than you, so I will bully you, right? I will, well, torture you or whatever. You can see that in schools, right? Bullies are usually miserable people, and in order to hide their weaknesses, usually they are, more intimidating. They will pick on other people who they see as, fragile and defenseless. Now the point of this is, in a way, at that higher dimension, it may have been chosen, okay? Now through the freedom of existence and of choice, things may not necessarily happen as we choose. That is why any soul that chooses to experience in lower vibrational areas, or even in higher vibrational realms, they will choose dozens of thousands of billions probably of possible choices. That is why the universe has so many of them. Now I also made a video called Project Nemesis, which is not necessarily my proudest creation, but well, I spoke there what happens when you stray too much from your chosen possibility, well, the possibilities of chosen choices or whatever you chose to experience in life in all shapes and sizes. Now you can see the fact that domination exists literally everywhere, okay? It doesn't matter if you are a woman or a man. Now people will use this idea as a manipulation, because it is easy to turn people into slaves, okay? Especially if you make them enter a state of victimization, then they are as good as slaves, okay? And nowadays you can see so many women claiming to be feminists, but they forget, or probably don't even know, what feminism is, but they are just slaves and pawns of other, greater forces, of which, of course, higher forms of parasites, because they need suffering, they need pain, because it feeds them. They are separate from creation, let's not forget, so they cannot gain the energy that we gain. And the point is, if you're actually feeling tired all the time, well, it might be a good time to actually start thinking, is it you're physically feeling tired, or are there other things draining you so that you feel tired? Don't forget, parasites, and let's not call them necessarily demons, because some of the demons actually help us. The point is, demons and parasites and all these, entities will always drain you, but they will always infect multiple people. They know before who is born, because they can also know which entities will choose to help certain people, and they also know before you are born what spiritual potential you have. Now some will just do it for fun, just like some people will just, torture a dog and kick them and not let them go, and just pull their tail and all sorts of that, okay? That's most likely a human body that fell, not entirely, but a lot, to the, control of such entities that need pain. And they will definitely pick on anything that is called defenseless. Now animals can be more or less defenseless, because we are kind of much more advanced comparing to them, but, well, taking it in a natural way, we are still somewhat equal. Many people fall simply to such demons, to such parasites, or actually are born already parasited by those. Think about all the maniacs in history who just wanted power, and more power, and most likely they got access to such power because subconsciously they made pact with such a parasite, and slowly and surely they became a drone of that parasite, which grew more and more into their consciousness, severing them not entirely but more and more from the process of creation. So the simple point now is that, well, what happened to them? Well, they will have to remain to the bidding of those entities, so the point is they will reincarnate most likely just to create pain. They are probably chosen by you or any other entity to torture you in this life, and most likely, especially when you are young, you won't know why your parents will be so abusive. These might have been chosen, or your parents might not necessarily have been chosen to simply, abuse you as much as they may have done. Okay, don't forget that there is karmic debt, and most of all through this you are paying some of it. Now the point is, you can also create karmic debt if you're suffering more than you should. The point of suffering in the end, it is just a lower vibrational emotion. Now, its purpose is to actually present you with a choice. Are you going to endure it more? Or are you willing to put the effort to find out why it actually lives? Now, a more surprising part about suffering is that in most of the situations that suffering isn't even yours. I think I've made a video about demons, but not necessarily exactly. But I think I've said, or I was thinking about that. I will say this shortly. We all have different demons in us, and their purpose is to help us. When a demon helps you, you have to create a pact with it. But the point is, the pact has to be bidirectional. They will lend you some of their power, if not all, but at the same time you have to give them something. The only thing they are asking for is energy and, well, positivity from you because, well, they cannot procure it. Now, some of the demons actually have a very important purpose. Some of them are actually cleansers of negativity as well. Now, the point is, when you cleanse negativity and you cleanse a lot of it, the point is you might not necessarily cleanse it entirely. Just like we humans do, we kind of attract a lot of filth and negativity and suffering from others, and what we experience in the end is kind of that result. As I said in a video, and I'm gonna repeat it as many times as it needs, the point is that you will feel a certain emotion only when it is enough of that. Okay, so you'll only feel happiness enough when you have actually enough of that, because you are both happy and miserable at the same time, and you are also fulfilled and you are also rich at the same time, because again, richness is a choice and it is a state of mind. It's not necessarily having a lot of money, because having a lot of money doesn't justify richness. You can win a lot of money at the lottery, but the question is, if you don't spend that money to improve yourselves, to gain some skills or whatever is needed to make sure that you spend, let's say, even 90% of that money, but you will become capable of earning money back, well, you're not necessarily rich. Being rich is more like having a lot of money, but you'd want to be abundant, okay? And abundance comes by offering value. Now, why did I say you are suffering and you're happy at the same time? Well, because it's all a matter of perception, and it all matters on what is more within you. So if you're suddenly feeling a lot of suffering, well, the point is you are kind of focused on a lot of that, or, well, the point is you have absorbed kind of a lot of that. Now, whatever you are doing, whatever you are reading, whatever movies you are seeing, whatever, especially, well, not necessarily movies, because they're kind of fake. I mean, they don't have actual emotions within them, even horror movies and the such, but they can give you the impression, and so long as they give you the impression, that still acts as a possible reality. It all matters what you see, what you hear, okay, whom you listen, again, because whenever you are expressing something, you're also expressing your current expression, okay, your current state. And let's say if you're feeling miserable and you're telling someone how you feel, you're also transmitting them some of their misery. Now if you think about yourself, how many people like that do you have in your life? Again, it's not necessarily your fault that those people exist, and hopefully it is not your fault that they are suffering. You see, it is their choice that they are suffering, mostly because many people won't do anything to escape from that suffering. Okay, so that suffering will remain with them. Now the point is they will become somewhat vampiric, just like the demons in them or parasites in them, because in the end they need to feed. And when those people have so many parasites that they cannot feed them, well, they become parasitic as well. So the point is they will just start moaning and crying and bitching and complaining, and they will go through like literally everyone. Like, you probably know those cases. When something bad happens to a person, oh, the government's fault, oh, my family's fault, oh, it's always your fault, or I don't know, it's always someone else's fault, right? It's another aspect of domination, okay? They expose themselves as theoretical victims because they look for compassion, and when they see compassion, is actually they see you as a sucker, because the moment you want to give them compassion, you are actually connecting to their state, but their state is of misery. So the point is, it's just like putting hot water in cold water. They will exchange, they will exchange heat, and the point is they will reach a mild aspect. So the miserable person will take from your positivity if you concentrate yourself on them, and they will give you some of their misery, you will give them some of your positivity. That's how it goes. That's how it's always been, and well, people are finally starting to get better and better at this. Now think of this. We needed to go through thousands of years, probably millions of years, right? Endless traumas, so that we as a race would become so capable of understanding these. Because if I were to suddenly speak in front of drones, or primitives, how I call them, people with very low awareness, it's like I'd be speaking in front of walls, okay? It's like I'd be in an empty room because no one would understand me. So the point with suffering is that when you feel it, you may have acquired a lot from the other people. Now, when it manifests, just think of it and let it go. The point is, we are always made to live life in reverse. And it is one strategy to be ruled, because when turning against yourself, you become your greatest enemy, and then you are easily controllable, because other people will give you certain ideas, and you'll accept them as true. That is why there are so many fake gurus that tell you, hey, you know what, pay me $20 and I can teach you how you can cure your pain. Others will say, pay me $50 and I will teach you how to make money. It's like, dude, why would you ask for $50 for a course to make money? It's like, dude, first of all, you get what you pay for, and $50 for a course to become rich? No thanks. Like literally no thanks, okay? So the point of suffering is, it is a form of karmic debt. Now the point is, you shouldn't be messing with other people's suffering, okay? First of all, you'll only get yourself inflicted with that. And you don't know how much those people have sinned in previous lives, or if they actually want to experience pain in this life. And the problem is, when you're interfering with that, you're actually creating karma on yourself, because you're disallowing them from feeling that suffering. It is also a possibility. That is why there are voices that say don't mess with miserable people, okay? It's not because you shouldn't have humanity and help them, okay? But if you want to help miserable people, make it in such a way that they are the ones who come to you. Don't worry, they will come to you, but the point is, make them that they ask for help, okay? Just because they beg you, it doesn't mean they're necessarily asking for help, okay? Because when you are asked for help, that other person should also act in a helpful way towards them. Because most miserable people will invite you in their lives to help them, but they just expect you to do everything. And that will cause suffering on yourself. Why? Because you're feeding yourself with suffering. Another way of gaining suffering is through watching pornography. It also took me a long time to realize this, but basically, pornography is a lot of suffering. What you see in there is people doing drug activities. Now, what is a drug activity? Well, it's a personal term for literally anything that some people, or literally all of us, would do in order to escape or run from things that, are hurtful to us or we don't want to solve. And, a drug activity is kind of something that you designate as something likable, and you don't necessarily like it. Okay, like you'll probably watch some memes or watch some movies on the internet instead of doing your homework. You don't necessarily like those memes, and I made a video on memes and, the dark side of memes. I'll probably throw another one because I don't think I actually covered literally everything. But memes also convey a lot of suffering in them, and they also amplify in a way the idea of pain and numbness, because you'll see a lot of memes that are kind of dark and people kind of accept them, and guess what, you're accepting more suffering in yourself. The people who participate in pornography, they are kind of black holes of suffering. There are some of them, or most of them, if not all, well, most of them are also what we can call cleansers. Okay, they are gonna attract a lot of attention, and you can expect attention of, lower vibrations. People who will watch them only for the physicality, right? For ideas of penetration, fetishes. Probably I should throw another video on fetishes as well. And these lower vibes that will be constantly pushed at them, the point is, well, being pushed at them, they will actually act as cleansers. So you should actually bow at least once towards them and say, hey, these are a kind of heroes that help us, purify and cleanse some of the older habits of sexuality and, kind of painful sexuality, let's say. Now, again, the point of suffering is that some of these entities will just create bodies. There are technologies on this planet that allow the creation of bodies, cloning and such. Of course, they are not available to the public, but who cares in the end? And that's why the reason why so many of the porn stars have such, appetizing looks, and most likely they are like full of entities and parasites that control them, because they know through those physical shapes they can draw in a lot of attention. And let's think of it, pornography is actually one of the greatest industries in the world. Now, why suffering? Well, because you see, they will have to do a lot of things against their will, probably, or some of them willingly accept doing a lot of things, and I doubt many of those actually are souls who want to experience what it is like to be in there. Actually, quite on the contrary, there are many spirits who would be interested in experiencing those lower vibes, but come again, as I said, the plans on paper are always nice and shiny, but when you come in this life, there are always more factors that will take into account. So, be mindful of your suffering, because it's actually telling a lot of things. Now, suffering usually does not belong to you, you have taken it from others. Now, suffering can actually be a very interesting point. It can actually belong to your, let's say, so-called torturer demon. It is said that most of us have something like that, and usually it's a demon of success. Now, this demon of success is a lower vibrational entity, probably has reached this state because of, having dealt with a lot of negativity and not having the power to cleanse themselves that fast. They kind of get to that very, very low vibrational state. So the point is, they have to find people who are compatible with them and who can actually reach a level that they can actually show them love and help them to purify their negativity. I think I actually have a video on this. So if you have suffering that is manifesting, you're constantly creating suffering to yourself through different aspects that are highly repetitive, chances are that is a message from an entity that's definitely interested in drawing your attention. There are meditations on the internet on how to meet your inner demon. I would suggest you watch Teal Swan's video on demons. Okay, she has a very interesting video in which she explains how demons work, and well, I'm sure there's more than demons rather than just simple demons. There are more types of them, and I think more like parasites in general, not necessarily. But demons in a way are more advanced. You can actually conduct communication and well, diplomacy with them. You will see that there are a few things they will want from you, but well, the point is very simple. Barter with them and you will see that they will want happiness. Whatever answer they initially give, the point is you have to take into account the opposite, because the answer will belong to a certain domain, and well, that domain is actually the domain that they represent. If they tell you that they want you to be poor, well, most likely they are a demon of fortune and a demon of success. Many people are successful because they are terraformed by such entities. At least subconsciously they made a pact with these entities, okay? And usually it's one, and you know, they lend them their power and they gain instead positivity and love. People that are highly successful, they do a lot of things, they accomplish a lot of things, and those sensations of happiness and fulfillment also are shared a bit with the demon, and they give you their strengths, which makes those people so capable to do a lot of work and require much less sleep. They will act as completely different humans because that demon is capable of, you know, alongside their angels, guiding them towards more healthier lifestyles, because in the end that demon becomes an ally, and through that they're actually interested in keeping you healthy and alive because, well, they get their idea for free. I mean, for free. They're still lending you their power, right? But it's what it's called as instant gratification. Instead of doing something the hard way, right, and they have to put a lot of work to make you miserable, they have to go through other people, right, to piss them off, and specifically, you know, indulge them in coming and having a quarrel with you. You know, there is a lot of work about this, okay? And all of these are actually happening because that entity has found you as a compatible person who can actually make a pact with them and give them some of their positivity in order to receive the powers of those entities, okay, which are very great, and it's much better to have them as allies. Now, I'm not gonna dive too much into this as well. I think I've actually covered that in a previous video. Now, the point is, I'm gonna sum up this video because I think it's kind of becoming way too lengthy, and I don't know how much time people actually have. So, until next time, take care of yourself. Very Born signing out.